2, 3. We are not live. We are not live, but we are alive, as Gary and I always say. And the lovely Victoria is in the house today. Now, before I say anything else, let's tell you what we're doing. We have got the ultimate guide to doodling with fabric shapes. You are going to unleash your imagination. Ooh, we like that. That reminds me of Charlie the Chocolate Factory. Just use your imagination. You know, that one. Anyway, I always have a little sing at the beginning. Well, lovely YouTuber, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely Gary, of course, as always. And if you like our content, please give us a thumbs up. We would love that. If you'd like to leave a comment below, we'd love to hear your comments. It does help us get out into the algorithm. As always, if you want to skip straight ahead to that bit, you can, because the time code is below. But if you'd like to have a little chat with us now and find out why Victoria is here, who is Victoria, and how mindfulness is really a fantastic end result of creativity, then do stick around with us right now. So if you're going, we'll see you there in a second. But if you're staying, so let's have a little chat with Victoria. Now, she is one of our amazing teachers here at Crafty Monkeys. Some of you may have taken a class with her. If you haven't, there are classes in our video store to rent right now. But Victoria is a wonderful artist. In fact, at the moment, Victoria, you are an artist in residence, aren't you? Where are you?
Yeah, so I am in residence at Weir Farm National Historical Park. It's a national park in America, in the United States. And there's actually a program through the National Parks Service where I think it's 50 different national parks around the country offer artist residency programs where an artist can come live at the park and make work in a studio. And this particular park is in Connecticut in the Northeast. It's only about 2 hours from where I live in Albany, New York. And yeah, I get to be here for the entire month of October, which is probably the best time to be here. It's the autumn, and it's just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And so do people actually come and watch you? You know, is that the idea, they come and watch artists, or is it to give you a month of creativity away from the redheads in your
Yes, I do miss the redheads, but so it's really up to the artist at this particular residency whether or not they open their studio. Normally, when I'm in my studio, which is right here in this beautiful view of the forest behind me, I normally will just have my door open and allow people to come in. Right now, I have it closed because I don't want anyone interrupting. But yeah, I think for the most part, artists close off their studio, do their work, and then there's a culminating event at the end where they do an open studio and show the work they've made. I'm always happy to engage with the public while I'm working. I love when little kids come in and they get so excited and they want to try it. So yeah, I will open it up to folks, but I can also choose to not if I want to just really focus. I'm just really responding to the materials and the space I'm in. So to be able to spread everything out, I've really just kind of dug into the little sketches that I make, and I've probably made about 40 of them so far, which is a lot. But I do have a project I need to be working on, which is a big commission for my local public library. So I'm doing a sort of a sculptural piece, which is a big deal for me. It's my first public art commission, and I'm very excited about it. So this week I'm going to dig into that. Like, okay, put the scraps away. Although I'm excited to be working with scraps today because that's my jam. But yeah, I also like to allow the space to kind of inspire me to do whatever it will, and I'm actually learning a ton while I'm here. So yeah.
And that's really interesting because that's what we're talking about when you are being creative, that it has a calming effect on you, and you know that you experience mindfulness. You know, you become very aware of what you're doing, your focus goes into that, you lose all of the other things in your life that are going on for that moment, which is really important for the brain to breathe. So I think it's very much connected that you've taken yourself away to kind of give yourself mindfulness, I guess, you know, as well as finding new ways to be creative. But what does it actually do for you in terms of mindfulness and creativity? What's the link for you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I've always been a creative person. I've always been around creative people, but I don't think I would have considered myself an artist until more recently. Probably because what I have been doing is, considered women's work, textile, in the craft domain. But it's something that I've just is always been part of me. And I feel like there came a point in my life where, I was a young mother and I just felt consumed by motherhood and the demands of just life, like keeping humans alive, including myself. And I just needed some sort of release. And I thought, okay, what I need to be doing is something creative, and what I do is textiles. So that was kind of the beginning of my artistic career. When I was a mother to young children, I actually made cloth books for a long time, but I needed that sort of identity beyond being a mother. And also it's just, I needed an outlet. I don't know, I feel like everyone is creative. So many people will come into my studio, or I'll come across them and they'll be like, oh, I wish I was creative. And I think, no, of course, everyone is creative, whether or not we make art, whatever that means. It's about an outlet to sort of, it's sort of like bringing in some sort of larger power into yourself, and letting it out through food, gardening, whatever it is. It could be anything, the way you dress, your makeup. So for me, it's just an essential part of my life. I can't really function if I find myself not being creative in whatever way. It might not be my work is quilting, really, but I also love to knit and embroider and things like that. And those are sort of my outlets, my mindfulness. And I find you can get in such a meditative zone. And I think it's just really important to sort of clear your mind, allow in something bigger than yourself, whether that's just like more thoughts and energy or whatever, and then contribute something to the world. I think it's really satisfying and rewarding.
Gary, isn't that the best answer we've ever had?
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, do you know, Victoria, that's very succinct what you've just said, because it's exactly, really sums up what, I sort of talk about a lot week after week, and how I feel about the creative process. And, we were just speaking about this, and also the time when you can be so creative and you've gone completely in your zone. And you said, for 12 days, I've been so creative, I've made so much. And then today you're going to sit back and you're going to actually go out into the countryside and just what we call grounding ourselves, aren't we, after that lovely experience of being creative. Go out in the countryside, and I said that's the time when you sort of look at what you have created, and then make more judgments, make decisions that you might go down and continue down one path, or you might stop that, or you might think that's a really good idea, I'm going to do more of that. So you really, really sort of like give me the whole package just in that one little
not rehearsed at all.
Yeah, encapsulated it. I love what you said in terms of finding this higher power within yourself. And as you said, that could just be going for a walk in nature. It could be, you said, in the wardrobe, in the things that you choose to wear. And I think that is a really good point, that actually just putting on a really brightly colored hat, your favorite hat, or your brightly colored scarf, and it's matching or it's not matching, and or whatever it is, and then deciding to go for a walk next to some water, or through a wood or something like that, that I think is being creative in a way, because you're kind of thinking of color. It's cheering you up, even if it's just to cheer you up, but you're thinking of color, you're putting something together, your outfit together, and then you're going out and you're looking at nature. So that, I think that is being creative, because it's taking you outside of all of the jobs we have to do. Going to the supermarket, picking the kids up from school, doing the shopping, cooking, ironing, washing, or just watching TV. I think if you do something for yourself, even if it's just wearing a nice outfit, choosing a color and walking into nature, that is being creative. So I love that.
I was going to say, we talk about creativity, and we do a bit of drawing, a bit of painting, a bit of sewing. But, and I've said to you before, Rachel, I mean, I think sometimes your creative output is all your editing and the way you do your filmmaking and things like that. That's where you get involved in, and hours go by as you're putting all that together. Victoria, you mentioned about gardening, forestry, and that, grouping plants together, putting some flowers together in a vase. Again, that is creativity, and a time when your mind is just thinking of the assembling and what color goes with what, or what shape looks nice next to the other shape. And so again, you've gone gone in a mindful zone of creativity. That's what's happened there.
Yeah.
And the really important thing is to not judge ourselves against anybody else, as to, because people could look at you, Victoria, and say, I couldn't do that, I'm not creative. As you said, people say I'm not creative. And you know who was the biggest culprit of that? Was me, because I was faced with all of these sewers and artists. And didn't I say that all the time, Gary? Oh, we see, I'm not creative, I just run it, I'm not creative. And you know, actually, I'm very creative. I always have been as a kid. It's kind of coming more out of me now. But I am very creative. I mean, even just in terms of colour and fashion, I've always enjoyed that. But like you said, Gary, my creativity is, I love the editing, you know, and the making the films and layering photographs, taking photographs. You know, that's my creativity. So don't ever judge yourself just because you're not a sewer or an artist or a quilter or a painter. If you're doing other things, that's being creative. You know, if you're sitting in your imagination and meditating for 10 minutes, that's being creative. You're creating a new narrative. You're creating a story. You're creating a visualization. It's like you're creating a book just in your head. So I think, you know, that's the important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, my goodness me. We could end it right there, but we won't, of course, because we are going to do our little creative exercise now. So if you are stuck for ideas and you actually do want to do something that is with your fingers and make something, then the lovely Gary has come up with a suggestion today for us. Just to say as well, you'll notice Gary is wearing a little pink ribbon and I'm wearing a pink cardigan, because this month we are raising money for breast cancer awareness. So we've got a little fund in the box below, in the titles below. We've got a little link in the box below, and you'll be able to see. You can just click on there, and it takes you straight through to the fundraising page. I am not getting any of your pennies; it goes straight to the charity. So that is Breast Cancer Now that we're raising money for. So we want to pop a few pennies in the coffers, because we're all doing this for nothing, just to say thank you and put it into that research. Then that would be wonderful. If you don't have the money, it doesn't matter. The fact that you're here joining us is enough for us. Although we would like a like. Please give it a like if you can. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, then you'll be notified, ding ding ding, of when we do our content, which is every Friday. We would love to have you as a regular supporter of Crafty Monkeys. But without further ado, right, Mr. Gary, I'm going to bring in your hands. Please tell us what we need to do.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is actually, it's sort of like a collage, a sort of trapping down scraps of fabric. And in front of me here, I've got my my doodle sketchbook, my stitch doodle sketchbook, which sometimes I refer to in these sessions. And in these pages here, can you just see, that's literally a little snippet that I've just sort of trimmed off, and then I've trapped that down on a piece of fabric. Could be anything. I'm using a bit of linen, but it could be a bit of calico, it could be a bit of old sheeting, but I'm just trapping it down. Here to this side, I've done some little squares of fabric that are just trapped again, stuck down, and then I've used just a little running stitch of squares, so it's squares on squares, and I've done a similar one here as well. So I've done that. So what I thought we'd do today, I'm going to put that to one side over there. Up there we go. I thought what we're going to do is just look through your scrap box or any little snippets of fabric, and you're just going to cut up 2 to 3 shapes. So I've got a very long little rectangle of some orange linen. That is, actually, it could be a bit of any piece of fabric that you could lay down. I've cut myself another shape. I've cut myself a circle, literally just eyeballed that circle and just sort of like trimmed around a circle. You could draw something if you wanted to, and I'm just going to put that, and I'm just going to have that, and then I cut myself a little triangle like that. Now I've just picked up what I had in my scrapbook. Now the idea is you can slightly overlay them, so they can be overlaid, so one can touch the other, one can go into the other. So I've created a little, almost like a little collage assemblage there. Now the idea is that we're going to use lots of running stitches going across. So horizontally, we can go vertically, we go up and down, up and down, up and down, using just ordinary stitch. Now, first of all, we need to hold it in place, because if we were to pick this up to sew, it's just going to fall all over. We could use different things we could use. We could put it down with some pins. So we could just hold it in place with some pins, and that could just hold it, and that would work quite nice. But sometimes with pins, I find while I'm holding it and stitching it, those pins are sticking into me and I might prick my finger or they're just a little bit uncomfortable. What I do tend to use sometimes just to hold the fabric in place for stitching is I just use a little bit of glue stick. So I just use a bit of glue stick, which I just sort of dab onto the fabric just to hold it in place. I don't put too much on because I don't want to make it all gunky with glue, but it's just enough just to be behind, just to hold it. Now, some of you at home might have something like some bonder web or something like that you could fuse a web that you could hold the fabric down with as well. That's fine. But, you know, in my drawer by my desk here, all I've got was a Pritt stick. And I thought, you know what, that would work really, really well. So I'm just going to use that. So I'm just going to put a few little dabs. I think they even do like a fabric version of glue stick. But you know what? When I looked at it, it's actually the same as just an ordinary glue stick. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to use that. So I'm just going to use the glue stick just to hold that in place. As I said, I don't want to get loads of glue all over it because, in fact, if I did, while I'm sewing it, what will happen is I'll start pulling the glue through on my needle and then I'll get my my sewing needle all gunged up with glue. So we don't want that. It's just literally the glue stick is replacing the pin. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting enough in just to sort of hold it like that. So I've made my little assemblage there, my little collage of fabrics. Now, needle and thread, I'm literally using just ordinary sewing threads, just sort of thread that I'd use in my sewing machine or I'd sew up to do a hem with or anything like that. And I've used a darkish color. In fact, because I've sort of, this is a very dark navy blue, that's a blue with the orange. And I've just, because of the artist in me, I know that orange is the contrast color to blue, and so that's why I'm sort of doing a blue and orange assemble here. So I'm going to just use some blue thread, but you know, just use any thread you've got to hand. It doesn't have to be that considered, as the idea is that you're just going to be running stitches through backwards and forwards. Now I have loaded a needle and thread, so I've got myself a needle and thread. I'm doing it single, I'm not doubling it up, but I have put a knot in the back on the ends of there so I don't have to sort of back tack it to get in. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rows of stitches just through the top here, just starting outside. So I'm going to start outside of my, well, the main piece of fabric here, and I'm just going to take it through. So I'm just going to come in from the back, not pull it too tight, and I'm just going to do a series of just small little running stitches. So this has got very much a relationship with like borrow stitch, sajiko stitch, all of those camphor stitch, all those decorative stitches that we use for embroidery, for quilting, hand stitch quilting. It's just exactly the same as that. So I'm just running my little stitches along. So I'm going to take it, if I show you how far I'm going to go. So I'm just going across all the way, and I'm probably going to take it beyond the other shapes on the other side, so that I've got a little, if I take it just a bit further.
Do you do any hand stitching work, Victoria, or is it mainly you're using a machine?
So in my work, I do finish quilts by hand, like I finish the binding by hand, but I don't do a ton of hand stitching. But in my personal life, I actually do. I have a whole project of like a hexagon English paper piecing kind of thing that I've been doing since, I don't know, since my oldest was little. She's 20 now, so maybe I'll finish it in my lifetime, but it's all hand stitched. So I love hand stitching. I just don't often get a chance to do it. So I appreciate this.
And it's quite, it is quite therapeutic just doing those, like you say, the paper English piecing. I mean, it does take patience because it's not going to be done in a day. You know, it is something you just pick up, put down, you've got all your little triangles and then you sort of like stitch them together and it starts to form, you know, a constructed textile in a way. But yeah, I just hand stitching, I've always enjoyed hand stitching. The opportunity to maybe repair or to hem or to, you know, just close a seam that's maybe it's just popped open that really doesn't warrant getting the sewing machine out, so you can just really do it by hand. And again, this sort of work, it really does practice those stitches. So what I'm doing is I've just gone backwards and I've just backtracked. So I've just done another line. I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to do 3 lines. I'm going to just do 3 lines. Now, I'm just giving you a guide for this for today, but you know, where your stitches go is entirely down to you. It's quite nice and nice for the brain to just sort of almost think of patterns within the stitch. So you've got the shapes of the fabric, but now it's up to you to create rhythm pattern with the stitches. The rhythm is while you've done one row of stitches, when you start to repeat the stitch is actually to try and get your stitches in line with the stitches that you've done before. So trying to have the next row of stitches that actually are in line and actually mirror exactly the same as you've done the row before. So I'm just rethreading. I'm just putting my thread because it popped out. There we are. So I'm just going to carry on along. So I think I'm going to do all the horizontal stitching to start with. So I'm going to do 3 here, and then I'm going to move, do another 3. How are we all getting on? You're right, Rachel. You've gone quiet.
I have.
You're okay.
Know, I'm not going to show you mine yet, but I'm going a little bit off.
Have you? You've got. Oh, watch out.
I know. Watch out.
Rachel's gone off piece.
See, I am the student now, Victoria, that rebels against my teacher.
Hey, now.
Yeah, he taught me everything he knew, and now I rebel.
And you managed to find, because I think when I suggested, Rachel, oh, I don't know if I've got this. I don't know if I've got it in my, bits of fabric, but you've managed to find some bits of fabric.
Yeah, when I first looked at what you were saying, I thought, oh, this was so much stuff. And actually, there is.
It isn't. No. You found what you were looking for. No, it isn't. So now, right, so I've done 3 little rows there. So just for me, I'm going to just continue, and I'm going to now going to drop down. I'm going to do another row or 2, 3 rows, but I just want to catch in now. I just want to start sewing across, and I want to catch in the tip of the triangle, just so that I can sort of anchor it in place. So I'm going to start, sort of eyeball it. I'm going to start in the same position on the side, but I'm going to come now when I go across. I'm going to be able to catch that tip of that little turned triangle that I've just done on its side, so I can start to trap that little stitch. I mean, this again, like we always say, these little tiny little hand sewing projects, doodles, are transportable. So, they don't have to be done in the studio up at the table. You can start it off, you can prepare it, you chuck it in your bag, and if you're going on a journey. So what is it? So you're having to concentrate, you're finding yourself like
Yeah, no, I actually am a big proponent of like beginner's mind and just kind of being open to learning new things. So, I think it's funny because I feel like I'm a beginner right now. I'm like, I've never actually done Boro. I've never.
Haven't you? Right.
It's funny, like there are so many things that I would love to do that they're just, especially when you do this for a living, it's like, okay, well, I do this all day, I want to do something different. And I don't do this specifically, but I think it's always great to learn new things.
And actually, Victoria, exactly, that is me, exactly the same. I try one thing and then say, oh, but I want to go over that and I want to try that. It's just so, and I think that's just the creativity inside, that natural idea, that want to create and want to have a go at that area of expressing creativity. And so for me, it's sort of like I have got so many interests within the creative field. And I do, and I don't think one lifetime is enough to express it all. No, I don't think for me.
It's definitely not. And you do like painting and I'm just textiles, and it's like even within textiles, it's like there's so much. And I have, my mother, I've learned pretty much everything I know from my grandmothers and my mother. And she is a master embroiderer, so she would be kind of mortified at my stitches right now, but no, she would be very lovely. But she and just knowing the number of different sorts of embroidery that there are, it's just
yes. But we are the generation that breaks rules, so we're allowed to do that, because there was, my mother, my grandmothers, they would all, embroidery, this was the stitches, this is how you laid it out, this is what it's supposed to look like. But, you can take some of those stitches and turn them around a little bit and do something really contemporary with them. So it's embroidery is not for, the older person. It is for, younger people as well. You can just make it fun. You can embroider all sorts of things. I have seen a front of a house which had chicken wire put over the front of the house, and then they embroidered the front of the house.
I'm gonna do that when I get home.
Amazing.
I'm just kidding. I don't know if I could do that in my city.
No,
They
but,
wouldn't allow it, but that's
but
incredible.
exactly. So that's where you can, it's think about turning it on its head and doing something really different with it. So it is really quite a nice thing to do.
Definitely.
And we always say, and even when someone's showing me what to do, and we've done these things before, we've had a guest and they've shown me what to do, I'm the one who goes quiet because I'm then totally absorbed in the learning and the process. And I go quite, quiet while I'm sort of involved in just getting and learning it. It is quite nice to do that. It's nice to be the student again.
Definitely. And I think it's so important to keep learning especially as we get older. It keeps your mind sharp. It's never too late to develop new hobbies. And I think a lot of people do that. Like when they retire, they think that's when I'm going to learn quilting or whatever. So I imagine that's a lot of the crafty monkeys out there who take your courses, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are lots of people who are complete beginners, and they just want to start somewhere. And we have such a variety of but yeah, I mean, there's loads on this YouTube for free. There are lots of quilting projects and learning how to do quilted blocks in the very basic form from people like Janet Clare, Sarah Payne, Lucy Brennan, Jenny Raymond was here. Quite a few people actually, and then obviously there are lots of projects, and Gary got involved with those as well. And there's things like a brush case holder and all sorts of things. And then obviously on Tea Time Tutorials, we've got lots of little sewing things. I was going to say, if anybody wants to look at other stitches, we've done other stitches, and I will link below to a class as well by Gary, which is a doodle stitch book class, and that's lovely. It's how to put it together and then do the stitches. So
it's quite nice to contain. So with some of the stitch doodles, I sort of contain it in one little sort of make a fabric book, and so they can all go in there. And it's quite nice little sort of a place to keep them all. And it actually it's almost like a sketchbook. It's a sketchbook in stitches, and it's just those, when you've got a sketchbook or a little journal, it's how you can let your mind wander or little ideas come up. And so that's what the journal, the sketchbook doodle book is about, really, is just me mind wandering, having a little play with stitches, thinking what I can do, what creates nice little patterns. And that's what that's about, really. So it's good.
I love that. I feel like that's something that young ladies in olden times would do, that sort of to practice their stitches.
They used to do. There was was it called a sampler?
Yeah,
wasn't it a sampler, which was almost like a sort of a square cloth, and it would have like numbers, it would have letters, it would have decorative borders, maybe some little sort of flowers on it, and it was done as a sort of a practice. I mean, obviously, it wasn't allowed to be. There was no mistakes allowed in it. It had to be absolutely perfect.
So
and in some respects, and I can understand the discipline, but it's sometimes with that discipline, and that's what now people think, oh, that's what embroidery is about, or that's what sewing has to be. And actually, I don't mind if there's a mistake in it. Sometimes those mistakes can actually make it look really, really quite nice. So no, I just forget the old way of doing it. Forget the discipline. Just go with the freedom and just learn a few things. Be as free as you want to be, and that's fine.
Yes, I agree. My motto is, if it's not falling apart, then it's good. For beginners,
Exactly.
Although I like to tell the story of when I learned, in particular, I think it was cross stitch from my grandmother. I was probably 5, and she would show me something, and she would ask to see my work, and she would look at the back and not the front. She would look at the back. And if the back wasn't perfect, she would ask me to take it out and redo it.
Would she really?
Yeah. So I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I attribute it to that. But also I don't have that sort of, I'm sort of like, well, it's good. You're not going to see the back. If it looks good from the front, it's fine. But I always think about that.
I remember that philosophy of looking at the back of the embroidery, and the embroidery had to be just as good on the back. Yeah, I remember that. Where can you remember, how did you feel when your grandmother used to say, oh, it's not really quite tidy enough, you need to tidy that up? Would you just do it with no question, or did you feel
I
disappointed?
would. I was a very meek child, and I would do that. But I think I was, I would strive to make it perfect so that wouldn't happen. I think it probably happened a couple times where she said, take it out, and she was kind about it. It wasn't like a taskmaster,
No.
fun, but yeah, so yeah, I think it just kind of led to, and I think that's my personality also as a tidy, I like things to be very tidy. So yeah, here's the back of my piece. Yeah, I'd like it to be. I don't want it to be like a big knotted mess on the back of anything I do, because
No,
else will see it and I'll know. So, yeah.
I'm quite a stickler, especially because I do, we do constructed textiles, we do with the sewing machine, free motion embroidery, even garment making. And I am a bit of a stickler for snipping your loose threads as you go along, because there's nothing worse than when you're sewing and then you're sewing again, and those loose threads are getting caught up behind with the stitching. So I am a bit of a stickler for cutting loose threads at the back. I don't like I don't like a load of, like, as you say, loads of threads hanging on the back. But I think, and that's definitely that.
Yeah, with something like garment making, that sort of philosophy of the back needs to be as good as the front is much more valid, I think, because the inside of your garment should be quite lovely. That's going to be against your skin, so I do think there's a place for that sort of idea. But and I really like snipping. I'm a meticulous presser. I'm always pressing in between all my seams and things like that.
Right. So. Yes. Yeah. And when you say do you so before, say you were opening a seam, do you press the seams together first? What I would call bed in the stitch, and then open up the seam, and then press the seam open. Is that how you do it?
I do. I don't know that it's. I think somebody told me once that this is an important thing to do, so I just always automatically do that. Yeah, I do that, and I do press my seams open as much as possible. Yeah.
And do you do you do it with a dry iron, or do you use it with steam?
I do a dry iron, but I'll spritz it often to be like I'll use just water. I've just had too many irons kind of like explode rusty water all over everything.
Yeah.
So
and that is disaster, isn't it, when that happens, when it sort of blurts out some muck from the machine on a lovely piece of work that you've been working on. It's just so frustrating.
Definitely. So yeah, but I love my my spray bottle with my distilled water. And then I use a tailor's clapper as well. So
right, I had this conversation yesterday about a tailor's clapper. So if no one out there knows, it's a piece of wood, isn't it, like a chunk of wood on that you use once you've pressed it down with some heat. You put the clapper on it. It almost like absorbs the heat and gives you a lovely, neat, crisp edge, doesn't it?
Yeah, that along with a wool pressing mat, I think is like, it's just, you end up with very crisp seams, crisp pressing, and I like that. So yeah.
So do you have the wool pressing mat on your ironing board?
That's actually what this is.
Right.
This on here is I have a bigger one as well, but this is my little guy. It's just a handy, and I don't know how much, again, it's like, is it really making a difference? Who knows? But I do get nice seams, nicely pressed seams with it.
Yeah. Are those I've seen other people with those wall pressing mats, and is that something quite sort of recent, what people have been using?
Yeah. I probably got mine maybe like 5 years ago.
Right.
So, and I think that's the first time I'd heard. I mean, it's certainly not something that my grandmothers ever were like, well, use wool to press, nothing like that. I think it's a fairly new.
No. And it's almost like a felted wool, isn't it? It's a felted mat.
It's felted. The only thing I will say is occasionally, this one, not so much. This one is good, but the other one does kind of have fibers that come off of it sometimes, which is.
Oh, right. So that's not always, you don't want that to happen, really.
No, it's not great, but you can just, they come off with a lint brush or whatever.
Yeah. I tend to use baking parchment to put over sometimes when I'm pressing things, because especially if I've used, say, for instance, a bonder web, like a fuse web on it, and or maybe I've used especially with sometimes I use quite mixed media, I paint some of my textiles first before I stitch into them. And what you don't want is that coming off the bottom of your iron. So just ordinary debaking parchment is a great way of protecting the work, protect your iron, but it's also, I think, sometimes stops it getting scorched as well. So that might help too.
Oh, that's a great idea. I never really thought to do that. But also, it's funny you mentioned painted textiles, because that's something that I eventually want to experiment with. I haven't done that. So maybe I should
Garrett does
do
that
the classes.
Yeah, he does. He does it in his classes.
It's quite once you opened up to actually painting your textiles, and it's so easy. You don't I have to say, you don't really have to buy special paint. I mean, I use, if it's not going to necessarily be put through the washing machine, you can use just water-based watercolor, tin of watercolors to actually tint your work. The more permanent, actually, acrylic paints are very permanent. And so you can use, and you can water down your acrylic paints as well. So they work very well. So yeah, definitely just have a little experiment. I'm sure, you could easily find, if you haven't got a tin of watercolor paints, just pop down to your local supermarket in the children's area, just get yourself a little tin of paints, and just a little, it could be applied with a sponge. Even if you haven't got a paintbrush, you can put a little a makeup sponge, dabbed in some water, and just dab it on and just stain the background. Then start to stitch into your stained background. And I think that's how I sort of started, really, just sort of just playing around, seeing what was possible with things that were at hand in my studio, really. And then haven't really looked back. So especially some of my my applique, I do a series of applique animals with free motion embroidery, and then I actually use paint just to finish off the characters within their faces or on their bodies, and it really sort of works it really well. But that just came by just experiment, just by playing around, really, just like we're doing today, just like we're doing now. It was just about doodling, playing, thinking, I wonder if, that's the thing. I wonder if, and then give it a go, and then you might find out that actually that's really quite a nice thing to do. It works quite well.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. Yeah, I've been meaning, it's a good reminder, because I actually have been, people ask me all the time, will you incorporate paint into your work? And I think, I know nothing about paints. I would love to, but I need to explore that. So maybe next residency, that'll be my
that could be, in fact, what you could do is actually, when you do your application for a residency, is that you could put that as actually what is going to, what it's about.
Yeah,
definitely.
Great.
That's good. Yours is coming on. Love it. I can see you're using like a lighter color thread on a dark background.
Yeah, so it's funny because I don't have any like calico. I have at home, I do, but I happen to have this piece of fine whale corduroy, this background. And then I just grabbed some other scraps that I had, and then decided to use a light thread.
And it's quite a nice weight. That corduroy is probably a nice weight to work on.
Yep. So
so that is literally what you had at hand, just some little bits that you had with you.
Yeah, and it's funny, I work with scrap, like this is what I've been using is scraps, not the corduroy so much, but I'm not sure how that got in there, but I usually quilting weight scraps. So I definitely had scraps on hand.
Really good. So I've just done all my sort of horizontal groups of horizontal lines. Now I'm going to come down through. So I'm going to start above where I've done my horizontal line. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to start doing stitches, just almost like trying to come down, catch the triangle, go through the circle, and then back up, backwards and forwards. And you can see there is so many combinations what you could do. I mean, we're just doing straight lines. You could do spiral lines, and we've done those before here. And you could go from corner to corner if you wanted to. But I think if you just do, excuse me, just 2 to 3 lines of stitch actually do really stand out really quite nicely. So
I'm like having flashbacks to when I did hand quilting with my grandmother, who was a master. My great grandmother was a master quilter, and so the goal with hand quilters, at least back in the day, was the tiniest stitches you could possibly make. And these are too big. But so now I'm like, can I make little tiny stitches? I'm not sure.
And she would be and that would be quilting through layers. So she'd have like maybe
yeah,
3
which is
layers
harder. Yeah, you said like through the top and the backing and the batting. That's not easy to do with little
No,
stitches.
it's not. No, and then you've got the bulk of that on your lap or wherever you're sewing, or maybe at a table, and you've got to go through it. That is. How would she secure it all down? How did she secure back then? Because we didn't really have sprays or anything to glue things down.
Yeah, it would be a basting stitches, many rows of basting stitches. I mean, the process to make, I can't even, to do it all by hand. She pieced everything by hand, and she made hundreds of quilts. I'm like, is this all you did with your time? Clearly not, but yeah, it's definitely a labor of love. So I always tell people, if they've received a handmade quilt, then that person really loves you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, lovely. Really nice.
Have a look close up at Victoria's first of all. So there you go. That's really nice. So, but we see, when you look at that, as you say, it's quite simple, because all you've done is just put a few pieces of square and oblong pieces of fabric together and stitched over them in a white stitch. But therapeutic, but also you could now put that into a little frame and frame it.
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
Nice piece.
Or you could, I mean, we've been talking about quilting, but if you secured that all down, that could then become, you could do several of those and then join them all up, and then that could become part of a front for a quilt, something like that, a bit more abstract, a bit more what we call modern quilting.
Yes. But lovely. Gary, we'll do yours. So
lovely. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So I've gone across and then I've gone down. I just did one more down the middle. Now, what I might do with this circle is I might actually would do maybe a spiral in there, and then I do other shapes. I've just done linear lines to start with, but now you could actually play with maybe a spiral that was around, quite a big spiral. So you're going over the top of it and let it really sort of become very abstract, very abstract. It's just, you could just play with that all day. You start it off and you just stitch into it as much as you want to. But none of these pieces are really going to go anywhere now. They are secured. So I'm happy, because it means that the Pritt stick did its job. It held it in place while I was just getting the main stitches down. And then I didn't have to worry about pins. And so I haven't managed to prick myself today. It's all turned out all right. I'm happy.
Very good. Well, we'll come on to mine now. So, when you mentioned earlier, you get your grandchildren to do your things with you. Well, I'm the grandchild here. So let's just imagine that I'm 6 years old. So what I did, okay.
So now,
when I started, I'm not going to show you the back of my stitch, is terrible, but this is the fabric. So this is like a printed fabric, but I wanted calico. So I turned it over so that it was just plain, but I cut out the lighthouse. And then I started stitching, and I thought, oh my God, my stitching is so bad. So I just did that. And then I thought, I'm going to actually make a little seascape. But then I'm really quite impressed with the sea, because I wanted to create the idea of, when a sea, you've got waves, you've got ripples, you've got movement. So, and then on my sailing boat thing, I've done French knots. So that's like, that in the canopy, you get the knots and the pulley ropes and everything that pull down. So that's what I did. I actually did a literal picture, which I know the stitching is that of a 6-year-old. But can I just say that I really enjoyed it? I just enjoyed making my little picture. And now I'd put a sun, I might try and get a little chair or something. And, and I could do all the straight stitching that you guys were doing and do that. But when I set off, that was what I was going to do, straight stitching. Then I set off and I thought, I'm going to take this into a different place that I want to go. I'm going to make a sea. How can I make a sea? I'll just go with some waves and zigzags and French knots. So there you go.
Exactly. You've now those stitches, Rachel, they're the ones you've learned in previous tea time tutorials, because some of those you learned with when we had Russell on the other week for as a guest, and he showed you how to do all those little seed stitches, and then you've done French knots several times with me, and I think we did it with Russell as well. I think we did dots and things. So so you've and they're just, no one's showing you to do that anymore. You're just automatically doing it. So it just goes to show you. You have learned so much. Yes.
So here we are, back in vision. Do you know what? I think it is worthy of my look at that. It's beautiful. I think it is worthy of going on my board. It is. It's worthy. You've made it. Look, you've made it. Oh, got some others now. I must get some more pegs. Anyway, the point is, right, that we've all spent 40 minutes together. We've done some sewing, we've had some fun, we're hopefully a bit more calm now to do the rest of the things in our day, and we've taken that time out. And it does not matter the end result. The idea is that you are just creative. And also as well, when you give yourself time, you are saying to yourself, I'm worth this time, I am worthy of this time. And that is a really good thing to heal yourself with, if you want to sort of love yourself back. Instead of always giving it to everybody else, give yourself some love back and say, I'm actually worth this time. I'm going to give myself that 20 minutes. That's important as well. Well, thank you so much, lovely Victoria. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you in the Tea Time studio.
Yes. Thanks for having me. It's been so fun.
It's been great fun, and thank you so much to the lovely Gary. And as you mentioned there, lots of tea time tutorials, so go and have a look at our playlist, because I think there's like 65 there now at least, of things that you can do and start being creative with, not just sewing, all sorts of things. And the breast cancer fund raising campaign is down below as well. If you'd like to leave 50p, that would be glorious. Just click on the link and put some money into that pot and then help somebody else. Okay, everybody have a wonderful day. YouTuber, you have a lovely day, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.